Welcome, believers. Welcome, conspiracy theorists. Welcome to the wonderfully weird world of the Tinfoil Hat Fan Club, where we talk about all the batshit crazy stuff that goes on in the world, and there is loads. Now, on today's episode, I want to talk to you about the Belgium wave of 1989 and 1991, okay? 2,000 incident reports, 650 accounts, 500 still remain unexplained. Fantastic if you're into UFOs. So please stick around and I will tell you all about it. Well, welcome back. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks very much. The wave of UFO sightings that took hold of Belgium between November 1989 and April 1991 is truly one of the most remarkable moments in UFO history, especially for the likes of me, a massive UFO buff. What's more, the sightings would result in over 2,000 incident reports, most of these meticulously detailed in nature. Further still, over 650 of these accounts were subject to investigation and 500 remain unexplained. So great, it's great. So everything about the Belgium UFO wave would suggest legitimate sightings of something completely unknown. So much so, it will be the authorities themselves who would push for such thorough investigations. Indeed, the Belgian authorities showed quite clearly that a country's populace would and did act with calm and rational foresight in the face of events that were quite irrational and bizarre. Now then, a little after 5:30 p.m. on 29th of November 1989, in the little town of Eupen, patrol and police would inform the switchboard operator, Albert Kretz, of a huge airborne object hovering over a field in front of them, okay? Now, according to their report, it was so bright, it was lighting up like a football stadium. Now, Kreutz, given that it was almost Christmas, returned with a quip. Oh, yeah, it might be St. Nick. However, the on-site officers urged him to go to the top floor of the building and look out the window to see for himself, because they're not mucking about. Now, realising the report was not a prank by his colleagues, he did as they suggested. Now, once there, he saw a mammoth craft. He said it looked like a boat floating in the sky. Now, by the time Kreutz was back in position at the switchboard, residents were swamping the system with calls of the strange bright object. While police officer Dieter Pluman and his partner made the report of visual contact with the craft, Kreutz told him to follow it. Okay, they did so for several minutes before it came to a stop and hovered over a retirement home. They too stopped their vehicle and watched the bizarre scene unfold in front of them. Now, the object was a distinct triangle with 3 orange-brown lights in each corner. In the middle of the underside was a bright red light that flashed at regular intervals. Now, remember, these people are policemen, right? They're credible witnesses. Now, as Pluman and his partner looked on, a small drone-like object left the main craft, continuously flashing in unison with the middle light above. It surveyed the area before rejoining the triangle, which then left with great speed. What was that thing? Was it a probe? I mean, what was it checking out as well? Now, 13 reports of sightings would come from police officers alone that evening. Over 60 more would come from citizens. So 13 police officers spotted these crafts, okay? Now, by early December, the sightings were not only national news, they were world press. All described the same object, triangular with 3 orange lights and a middle light. Okay, by the evening of the 11th, going on to the 12th of December, another surge of sightings occurred. Now, one of these sightings took place over the skies of Ernich. The witness was an experienced army colonel, and his name was Andre Omond. Now, while driving to the train station to pick up their son, Omond and his wife would notice 3 bright lights set out like a triangle and with a pulsing red light between them. Now, Ormond would bring his car to a halt in order to get a better view, but as he did so, the triangular craft slowed with him. He repeated this several times, each time the craft slowing with him. It then went into a nearby woodland, so this craft was toying with him, right? So this Andre Ormond, Colonel, would slow his car and it would slow. He would speed up, it would speed up. It was they were cat and mouse, basically, okay? Now, Ormond followed it, gone into the woodland, eventually pulling his car over near an open field. There, from behind the trees, come the brightly lit airborne vehicle. Ormond will report that he could hear other traffic and even a nearby train, but no sound whatsoever come from this huge ship. Just as he was about to leave, the craft shot away at speed. Now, Ormond would later state that no man-made object is able to do what I saw that object do that day. Not then, and still not now. And he is a colonel, so he would know, wouldn't he? Now, other sightings will pour in from the general public, okay, as this is building up, isn't it? Now, numerous residents of Liege and Nemours will report seeing a triangular craft over their houses. One particular man, he witnessed a glowing object over nearby woodland, and it was struggling to free itself from a spruce tree. He was so close he could see symbols of electrons on its side. Bit strange that, isn't it, really? Why would a craft get stuck in a tree, you know? So, but hang on, look. Now then, the apparent pros and cons of SOBEPS, okay? SOBEPS is the Belgium Society for the Study of Space Phenomena, otherwise known as SOBEPS, and I'll stick it up there, okay? Now, this organisation was already the largest UFO organisation in Belgium when the wave began. However, as more and more reports continued to come in from the public, they almost become central to the investigation of the wave in general. For example, after they would interview the witnesses, they would often speak to the local and national media, with quotes from what they had said being carried in various publications. In this way, at least, as events were unfolding, they were the mouthpiece of the Belgian wave, okay, and that's important to remember. It gives the skeptics a bit of strength as well, okay. However, as the reports increased, so did the demand for their services, so much so that more and more investigators were recruited by the organisation. This, at least in theory, often used by skeptics, perhaps decreased their overall competency and accuracy of the investigation somewhat. And, as we will see shortly, this would make accusations of leading the media astray against the organisation. So skeptics had it fed the skeptics' weapon, that they were organising people that wasn't necessarily great investigators, okay, and that gave the skeptics some strength. That said, however, the organisation perhaps managed to compile one of the most detailed and documented records of a UFO wave. And although some would accuse the organisation of monopolising the situation, these records may prove to be invaluable. Okay, now, the sightings would continue around Belgium airspace. By the 25th of December, officially reporting procedures were communicated to the public, okay, because it got beyond a joke. There were so many. First, they would report the sighting to the police. Now, once the police had confirmed it, a radar station would be notified. Now, one that had authority to launch standing F-16 fighter jets to intercept. So once the radar station's been notified, as they had the authority to launch the fighters, okay? So that's how the procedure went. Now, although it wasn't public knowledge immediately, in July 1990, at a NATO press conference, it was revealed that an F-16 fighter jet had been launched on the 30th of March of that year. Now, a Major General, Wilfred, would talk the considerable amount of press through the tapes of one of the F-16's flights, okay? At one point, the triangular craft was travelling at around 1,000 knots. Further to this, it showed the capability to go from 150 knots to 500 knots in a matter of seconds. Ultimately, the craft vanished at a breathtaking pace. At this point, it is perhaps worth examining the jet chase in a little more detail, and that's what we'll do, okay? Now, the incident in question began at 11 p.m. on the evening on the 30th of March. A policeman, a Mr. Renkin, would place a phone call from his home to the control reporting centre. He would claim that he's just seen 3 unusual lights that were moving in the direction of a little French town. He would report that it was clear that the lights were fixed to the underside of a triangular object, and what's more, they were definitely not stars or planets. He would further claim that the lights were changing colour, including green, red and yellow lights. Now, the control reporting centre would dispatch a patrol to Renkin's property so that they could view the object for themselves. Now, by 11:10, Renkin reported that another set of 3 lights in a triangular shape had moved into view and joined the first set. So now we have 2 triangles. At the same time, the control reporting centre reported an unknown object on their system. So obviously they've spotted it on their radar now. The patrol unit would arrive at the Renkin's property just before 11:30 p.m. They quickly confirmed the strange lights. One of those present was a Captain Pinson. He stated in his report back to the control reporting centre that the colour changes continuously, although the prevailing colour is red. The lights would change to blue, white, yellow and green, although they didn't appear to follow any particular order or pattern. As the patrol unit and Renkin continued to observe the lights, the control reporting centre continued to monitor the strange anomaly on their radar systems. A second confirmed radar sighting came from the traffic control centre shortly before midnight at 11:56. The order was then given to launch military fighters on an intercept mission. Okay, so now the control centre has gone, right, let's get a plane up there. Now, during the first 7 minutes of the 31st of March, a total of 9 separate intercepts were attempted by the F-16s. However, during the 3 times they managed to lock onto their target, it would simply disappear at an ultra-rapid pace. Well, mentioned above, basically, it can go from 150 knots to 500 knots in a minute of seconds. So every time the F-16s tried to lock on, it just simply shot off. Now, as this was unfolding, the witnesses on the ground looked on. Not only could they see the triangular lights, but they could, on occasion, see the F-16s passing overhead, even circling the area where the UFO was hovering. So it's great to have foot witnesses as well. So not only have we got fighter pilots, we have got policemen, and we have got just normal everyday witnessing watching this unfold. Now, during the course of the next 40 minutes, the F-16s continued to make attempts to lock on and intercept the strange craft. However, each one would fail. By 1 a.m, the craft vanished completely and left the radar screen. However, only 5 minutes later, another sighting came from the ground, but in a different part of the city. Now, as all this is going on, Pinson would continue to observe the lights from the ground, and some of the details he would offer are quite intriguing. Okay, he would state that the brightest light appeared to move slightly with jerky and short moves. I don't know what he means by that, but jerky and short moves. Now, by 1:30 a.m, it was all over. It appeared that the strange craft had disappeared good for good, with no further sightings that evening. Now, one of the pilots that evening was a Yves Melbergs. Due to the other F-16's tapes malfunctioning, it could not be ruled out that Melberg's tapes were displaying some kind of magnetic malfunction. Melberg himself would state years later that he firmly believed there was something in the sky that night. He would further point to not only his confirmation tapes that they're saying might be faulty, but witnesses on the ground and the control tower's own radar system. The sightings would continue in abundance until late spring of 1991. Then, just as quickly as they began, they would cease. Before they did, however, an unsuspecting witness would capture a photograph that could prove to be one of the most important in UFO history. Now, the jet chase, the 30th and 31st of March, is perhaps one of the most intriguing and incredible events of this Belgian wave, not least because of the corroborating sightings of both ground witnesses and radar at the same time. So this jet chase, if anything, is solid proof to me that they were definitely chasing something that night. It wasn't a balloon, and it wasn't swamp gas, and it wasn't mass hysteria. That plane was definitely chasing something. Another intriguing detail of the F-16 incident is that unlike many of the incidents of the Belgian wave, the sighting occurred at a relatively high altitude. Furthermore, the rapid speeds on display would appear to dismiss the idea that the triangular craft was simply a conventional aircraft that had been misidentified, or that it could have been planets or celestial bodies. A further intriguing observation by investigators regarding the dramatic speeds observed was the distinct lack of noise following speeds that would obviously have broken the sound barrier. Incidentally, for all of the apparent explanations of the sighting from sceptical corners, the aspect of the jet chase has never been addressed. Of course it hasn't. Essentially, the jet chase of late March would appear to be one of the most important aspects of the overall wave, and that one, I think, deserves further study. Okay then, now, we carry on, right? Now, there is a photo out there, okay? The evening on the 4th of April 1991 may prove to be one of quite importance to UFO researchers and indeed anyone who seeks the truth to such phenomena. That evening, while walking her dog, a young woman noticed one of the strange triangles overhead. She quickly returned home, informing her boyfriend, who grabbed his camera and headed outside. Now, there were only 2 shots left in this film. He steadied himself against the wall of his home to stop his arms from shaking and pressed the button down twice. Upon the eventual development, one of them was blank, but one of them, however, was crystal clear, and I'll stick the photo behind me. Now, this picture clearly shows the triangular craft, complete with the orange-brown lights on each corner and the red light in the middle. Now, the shot would undergo intense investigation, and after years of scrutiny were declared genuine and with no evidence of tampering. Now, for the intense interest and apparent credibility of the is called Petit Regime photograph, there are plenty of people who have declared the picture to be nothing but a hoax, and these accusations would seemingly prove to be accurate when a previously unknown man stepped into the limelight to own up to the photograph. Now, he would later be revealed as Patrick Marshall, who would publicly explain to the media how he made the picture, even showing previously unseen pictures of his experiments in order to capture just the right image. There were questions from some corners before the admissions of Patrick. For example, the fact that the picture took 4 months to be submitted for public examination was highlighted as being a reason to have suspicions. However, if someone was looking to dupe the public, they would surely have come forward as soon as possible. So you've got the pros and cons there, haven't you? Other skeptics argue that there is no actual background in the photograph, again, casting doubts on some of the authenticity of the image. Now, what should we make of such admissions and accusations? Is it a clear-cut case of someone looking to fool the public? If so, why wait so long to come forward? Or might, as unlikely it might be, it be a case of stage admission to draw attention away from the case, at the same time making it easier to dismiss other similar sightings as nothing more than a mistaken sighting or a manufactured event? I think that's possible, you know. I do think they would probably do that. As we might imagine, there have been a variety of explanations put forward to explain the wave of sightings across Belgium. However, While many sightings could very well be explained as a result of misidentified aircrafts or even celestial objects, the general thrust of the sceptical viewpoint appears to revolve around the notion of simple mass delusion or hysteria. Some views state, right, that the UFO investigation group, SOBEPS, who conducted the real-time investigation during the sightings, were guilty of overplaying the reports and, according to a bloke called Mark Hallett, of spreading misinformation, essentially fake news. From this apparent spreading of misinformation, it is Hallett's conclusion that the Belgian waves was nothing more than a fueled mass delusion. I'm not buying that. Okay, now, all right, it kind of makes sense a little bit. You know what it's like when there's hype, you know, and people see things. I get that, but the original witnesses, the 13 policemen, the general, none of them are going to buy that. Now, Brian Dunnans of the Skeptoid podcast would echo similar views after his examination of the sightings, that essentially, once reports entered the public arena, they encouraged further report of sightings that most of the time people would not think twice to be out of the ordinary, and that does make sense. Like I said, or would it be that these people doesn't look up very often? You know, if you think about it, I mean, I'm looking up all the time. I always look in the sky, but do a lot of people, you know? They just go about their normal business. It wasn't until something was said was out there that people started taking more interest. Now, I get it. Such explanations, while certainly plausible, are not surely watertight. Such sightings were spread across many months, and what's more, many were relatively close up as opposed to like a strange ball of light moving high up in the sky. Further still, the typical craft reported were distinctly triangular shaped. So, what was witnessed by the thousands of individuals during the surge of sightings over Belgium? That something was enjoying access to Belgium airspace is beyond a doubt. Literally scores of pieces of video footage and photographs, all right, they're not inconclusive, but they're out there. A simple search on YouTube will find that out for you. Had they arrived here from another world, perhaps, or even another dimension, the technology on display would certainly suggest it is far more advanced than anything we have on Earth. And despite assertions from skeptics that weather balloons were likely responsible, the wealth of first-hand testimonies on how these craft moved suggests otherwise. Or might these crafts and the wave of sightings being a test of top-secret vehicles by shadowy governments? Although it is not out of the question, it would raise the question of why such prolonged testing would take place over a relatively high populated area. So what do you think? Do you think? I mean, I am 100% believing that what was seen was UFOs. Why they were there, who were piloting them, that's a different question, isn't it? And that's something I would like to find out one day, but I probably never will. So look, you know, tell me what you think. Please drop a note in my little, you know, a little note in the notification bar, you know, and tell me your thoughts on it, okay? Well, look, this was the Tinfoil Hat Fan Club. I'm so glad you stuck around. Please like and subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one. Thanks.